Have you ever wondered why you just instantly click with a stranger?
Oh, yeah.
Or why certain people just drive you absolutely crazy for no logical reason?
Right, like right off the bat.
Exactly. We usually brush that off as a coincidence. We chalk it up to a clash of personalities or simply good chemistry.
Yeah, that's the standard way we look at it.
But what if there is literally no such thing as a coincidence?
Mm.
Like, what if every single handshake, every argument you have at the grocery store, and every lingering glance is actually a very specific line item on a multidimensional cosmic ledger?
It's a wild thought.
It really is. So today we are exploring a highly specific, fiercely detailed spiritual text from March 2006. It was written by Deformed Buddha, and the translation we are looking at is titled Transcending Mundane Bonds and Forming Celestial Ties.
And our mission for this deep dive is to really explore the mechanics of this incredibly unique worldview.
Right.
We are looking at a framework where every single human interaction is viewed, well, not as a social event, but as an actual cosmic transaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. The ultimate goal here isn't just to be a good person for the sake of morality. The goal is to mathematically balance your spiritual books so completely that you can literally escape the gravitational pull of the human realm.
That is intense.
Very. We want to unpack the gears and levers of this philosophy to understand how this text believes the universe operates and what that means for how you, the listener, view your own daily relationships.
Okay, let's unpack this, because right out of the gate, this text takes the concept of human connection and turns it into something vast, rigid, and honestly surprisingly mathematical.
It really does.
The fundamental rule establishing this entire universe is that absolutely everything is governed by karma.
Right?
There are no exceptions, no random encounters, and no blank slates.
No, not at all. The text states plainly that there is no love without cause, and there is no hatred without reason.
Which is a heavy thing to process.
It is. Think about the implications of that for a moment. If someone cuts you off in traffic and you feel a flash of anger, or, if a neighbor helps you carry your groceries and you feel a wave of gratitude,
Yeah.
this text argues that neither the event nor the emotional response is random. It is all rooted in a prior cause.
Wow.
A bond is formed when karma arises, and it dissolves when karma ends. That isn't just a metaphor in this text. It is the literal engine driving every single event in existence.
And the source material illustrates this engine with an incredibly poetic but also deeply intimidating quote.
Oh, I know the one.
It says, "Those with destiny will meet across 1,000 miles, while those without it will not meet even face to face."
It's a beautiful image, but the beauty of that image masks a system of inescapable gravity.
Right, because you can't get away from it.
Exactly. The text stresses that the physical distance between two people is totally irrelevant to the karmic bond.
Yeah.
You could be separated by oceans, mountain ranges, or literally thousands of miles.
Mm.
But the unresolved energy between you will inevitably pull you together to settle the account.
It's wild.
And it doesn't just stop at geography on Earth. The scale of this system expands into realms most of us can't even conceptualize.
Right, because the text explicitly lists out these different existential planes where these bonds stretch across.
Mhm.
It mentions the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, and the blissful world, which seem to represent these higher, prolonged states of existence.
Yes.
But then it also includes the animal world, the netherworld, and something it calls the frozen layer.
Yeah, the inclusion of those specific realms really expands the scope of what a relationship actually is in this philosophy.
How so?
Well, you are not just dealing with the people in your immediate physical vicinity, you are dealing with entities across multiple existential planes.
Right.
The frozen layer, for example, implies a realm of deep spiritual stagnation or punishment. But even if an entity is trapped there, a karmic tie you share with them remains perfectly intact.
Wow. So it just waits.
Exactly. The data of your connection is preserved, waiting for the right conditions to reactivate.
So if I am understanding the mechanics here, karma acts like an inescapable, multidimensional cosmic tracking system.
That's a great way to put it.
Like, even if someone is locked away in this frozen layer, whatever unresolved drama or debt I have with them is eventually going to drag us back into the same room or the same lifetime across entirely different dimensions.
That captures the physics of it perfectly. The text emphasizes that these bonds are profoundly difficult to sever, but they absolutely must be resolved.
You just can't outrun them.
No, you cannot outrun them, and you cannot hide from them in another realm. This completely removes the idea of coincidence from everyday life for anyone practicing this.
But that creates a terrifying trap, doesn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, if every relationship is a karmic bond that absolutely must be resolved, what exactly does resolving it look like?
Ah,
If the universe is essentially a massive sorting machine, constantly forcing us together just to settle old accounts, how do we actually clear our ledger without creating more as a mess? What is the accepted currency for paying off this spiritual debt?
so to understand how to resolve these bonds, the text provides a really rigid two-part framework.
Okay.
The first key is resolving ties with worldly individuals. The second is letting go of attachments to the mundane world altogether.
Makes sense.
And the way it describes resolving ties with people is based entirely on a framework of strict transactional debt. You have to repay exactly what you owe down to the absolute fraction.
And this is where the text brings in a surprisingly familiar voice to make its point.
Yes, it really surprised me.
Amidst all this complex Eastern spiritual cosmology and dimensional tracking, it suddenly quotes Jesus.
It does. It pulls a specific line, quoting Jesus as saying, "You will not get out until you've paid the last penny."
The last penny. I mean, that phrasing strips away all the romanticism of human connection, doesn't it? It's so specific and mathematical.
It has to be, because the spiritual accounting in this philosophy allows for zero margin of error.
Wow.
In this framework, honoring your parents, raising your children, caring for your siblings, or even contributing to your community, these are not categorized as warm, fuzzy acts of love or moral duty.
What are they then?
They are literally categorized as debt repayments. You are paying off a tab.
Oh, wow.
The text warns that if you fail to repay these debts in your current life, the balance carries over to the next, or the life after that.
So you're just stuck here.
Precisely. As long as you owe society or individuals anything, you are legally, in a cosmic sense, bound to reincarnate here. The human world is essentially a debtor's prison, and you cannot leave until the balance is zero.
Which logically leads to what seems to be the golden rule of this whole text.
Right.
The core principle for anyone practicing this philosophy is better to let others owe me than to owe others.
Yes, that is the core of it.
It advises practitioners to actively avoid seeking advantages, to give more than is required, and most importantly, to take less. That is supposedly the only way to accumulate wealth in the heavenly kingdom.
It basically functions as an inverse economy.
How so?
In the human world, our instinct is to accumulate wealth by taking more, securing advantages, and maximizing our return on investment. Right?
Yeah, totally.
But to escape the human world, you have to run your cosmic ledger in the exact opposite direction. You need a massive surplus of outgoing energy and absolutely zero incoming debt.
But I have to push back on this thoughtfully because applying this to real life sounds incredibly bleak.
I can understand that reaction.
Doesn't this make family and love sound incredibly transactional? It frames raising a child or caring for siblings as just clearing a cosmic tab.
Yeah, it does.
How does the text reconcile human affection with this incredibly strict, cold accounting system?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it actually doesn't try to reconcile with human affection at all. In fact, it views human affection and emotional entanglement as a dangerous trap. The goal is total detachment.
Total detachment.
Yes. The text provides strict warnings against deep involvement with worldly mortals. It advises against harboring malice, of course, but it equally advises against extending too much emotional kindness. You are supposed to maintain absolute neutrality.
It even explicitly says, do not accept their favors, which goes against every instinct we have for building community.
The perspective of the text is that worldly benefits actively anchor you to the ground, hindering your path to the heavenly kingdom.
That makes sense within the framework.
It uses very specific professional examples to illustrate the mechanics of this danger. It says that if you are a doctor, you must never accept extra gratitude or gifts from your patients after healing them.
Wow.
And if you are a government official, you must never accept extra rewards, favors, or bribes.
Because the moment you accept that extra favor, even just a sincere thank you gift, you have unbalanced the equation again.
Yeah.
You've put yourself back in debt to that person, creating a brand new karmic tie that you are now legally obligated to resolve later. You've planted, as the text specifically calls them, seeds of future suffering.
That is the exact mechanism. You might enjoy the short-term benefit or the warm feeling of that gift today, but the metaphysical cost is staggering.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
You have just purchased another lifetime bound to the mortal realm. You've forged another iron chain linking you to the human world.
But that presents a massive practical problem. I mean, you can't just isolate yourself entirely to avoid accumulating debt.
Right.
Unless you're living in a cave, you have to exist in the world. You have to
Hmm.
buy groceries, commute to work, interact with strangers.
Mm.
So how does this philosophy advise navigating the toxic or dangerous people we inevitably encounter?
The text addresses this by emphasizing the extreme dangers of environmental contamination.
Contamination.
Yes. It issues a stark warning about forming any kind of tie with wicked individuals, because the bonds you form dictate your gravitational trajectory. Bonding with someone who is heading down a dark path means their gravity will pull you down with them.
Okay, yeah.
The text points out that if a wicked person you are tied to ends up in jail, you might be implicated, or at the very least, your own peace and trajectory will be severely disturbed.
And it goes far beyond just getting a knock on the door from the police.
Oh, definitely.
The text claims that if this wicked person descends into hell, you might literally have to follow them into hell just to resolve your karmic tie. You have to endure the underworld just to hand them the final penny of your debt.
That is the ultimate, uncompromising consequence of the rule we established at the very beginning. Bonds must be resolved, regardless of the realm. If your debtor is in hell, your payment is due in hell.
To really drive home how dangerous our environment is, the text uses this rapid-fire string of proverbs to describe environmental influence.
Yes, the Proverbs are fantastic.
It's almost like a poem. It says, proximity to vermilion makes one red. Proximity to ink makes one black.
Right.
Worship Buddha, gain Buddhahood. Worship demons, gain demonic traits.
Notice how those pairings describe a mechanism of absolute absorption.
Totally.
It isn't just about picking up bad habits from your friends. The text is describing a physics of spiritual osmosis. What you place your energy near, your energy absorbs and becomes.
And it expands from behavioral influence to environmental influence. It notes that frequent exposure to the river makes one wet, and frequent trips to the well will eventually break the pot. Being close to the mountains makes one familiar with the sound of birds, and being close to the water makes one understand the nature of fish.
Exactly.
But the most striking one to me is this. Staying long in fragrant places makes one unaware of the scent, while staying long in foul places makes one oblivious to the stench.
This raises an important question for the practitioner, doesn't it?
What's that?
If the human world is, by the text definition, a foul place filled with dangerous ties, how do you survive it? If paying a debt directly to someone requires interacting with them, and interacting with them risks this spiritual osmosis and contamination, how do you possibly escape the loop?
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text actually provides a loophole.
It does.
It gives us what it calls the best way to repay debts and resolve these mundane bonds without getting your hands dirty. It introduces a concept called formless giving.
Right, formless giving. It is defined as performing generous acts of merit without any attachment to the outcome, the recipient, or your own ego.
It's like a cosmic drive-through where you can just pay it forward.
I like that analogy.
Right. Like if you owe person A, say, your parents who have passed away,
Sure.
you don't have to somehow reach across dimensions or follow them into the netherworld to repay them directly.
No, you don't.
Instead, you can deposit merit into what the text calls the Tao's bank by doing selfless actions for person B, person C, and person D. And the universe essentially settles the account for you.
Yes, that analogy is spot on. The Tao's bank acts as an absolute metaphysical law. When you make a deposit through selfless action, without attaching your ego or demanding a receipt, the Tao perfectly balances the ledger across all dimensions on your behalf.
And the absolute genius of that mechanism is that it allows a practitioner to clear their old ledger without creating new, messy, direct attachments to people.
That is the crucial distinction. You are paying down your spiritual mortgage without taking out a new line of credit with someone else.
Exactly.
However, emptying your mundane bank account and severing all these earthly ties is really only half of the equation presented in this text.
Right, because if you systematically cut all your earthly tethers, you're going to be left drifting in a void unless you actively anchor yourself to something else. What are you supposed to be connecting to instead?
This brings us to the actual goal, which is the second half of the text's title, forming celestial ties. The goal is to actively connect your consciousness with celestial beings, Buddhas, and individuals who possess what the text calls enlightened roots. You are systematically shifting your consciousness away from the human world entirely.
So if I tether my consciousness to these enlightened beings, how exactly does this help? Like, what are the mechanics of this upward pull?
The text relies on an old saying to explain the physics of this trajectory. When one person attains the Tao, even their household rises to heaven.
Wow, so you just get carried up.
Now, the text notes this shouldn't be taken as entirely literal in every single case, but it highlights the profound gravitational influence of a celestial tie.
It's the exact opposite of the wicked tie that drags you to hell.
Exactly.
You are hitching your wagon to a star. And the text outlines a very specific mathematical mechanism for this, involving a group called Lifechanyuan celestials.
Yes, and here is where the inescapable, rigid nature of karma finally works to your advantage.
How so?
The text states that if you form genuine bonds with 10 of these Lifechanyuan celestials, and those 10 people successfully refine themselves and become celestial beings, well, the karmic ties between you and them still exist.
Oh, right.
And because cosmic law dictates that bonds must be resolved, their ascension will naturally exert a massive gravitational pull on you, lifting you into the celestial world with them so the bond can be settled.
Because they literally cannot leave you behind without breaking the fundamental law of the universe.
Yeah.
The bond has to be resolved, so their success becomes your success.
Precisely the mechanism at play. It is an irresistible upward pull.
So what does this all mean?
Yeah.
I mean, when you strip away the poetry and look at the sheer mechanics of it, this text essentially advocates for highly strategic spiritual networking.
That's a very modern way to look at it, but yeah.
You are carefully curating your cosmic friend group so that their upward momentum literally drags you to enlightenment. You are cutting off the assets that are sinking and tying your ledger entirely to the assets that are rising.
What's fascinating here is how entirely consistent and uncompromising this framework is from beginning to end.
Totally.
This text presents a complete closed-loop system of the universe. Every single interaction you have is either a debt, a repayment, or an investment.
There are no loose ends.
None. You are constantly in a state of transaction. You're either being pulled down by mundane ties or you're being pulled up by celestial ones.
And that brings us right back to you listening to this deep dive. Whether you are using this to prep for a comparative religions class or you are just wildly curious about philosophy, this text issues a pretty massive challenge.
It really does.
It challenges you to look at your social interactions today, the quick text messages, the casual conversations with coworkers, the deep familial relationships, not as random events, but as an active, ongoing ledger of universal debts and credits.
It forces you to evaluate everything.
But it also leaves us with one final lingering question that builds on the text to chew on.
What's that?
The text suggests that true spiritual freedom and ascension come from achieving a state of total detachment, owing nothing to anyone on earth.
Right.
But if you successfully cut all your mundane ties, severing every single earthly bond of attachment and affection, do you risk losing the very empathy and vulnerability that makes you human in the first place?
That is a profound tension.
Is the price of becoming celestial giving up your humanity?
It's an incredibly difficult question at the heart of this philosophy.
Definitely something to mull over the next time someone offers to buy you a cup of coffee, and you have to decide whether to accept the favor. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the cosmic ledger. Keep asking questions and keep looking closely at the ties that bind you.